No one saw this coming. Not Ford, not GM, not even Tesla. John Deere, the name behind America's most trusted tractors, just dropped a bombshell that's shaking the entire U.S. auto industry to its core. A fully American-made pickup designed not just for the farm, but for the future. Diesel? Electric? Hybrid? You're not ready for what's under the hood. This isn't just a truck, it's a declaration of war. Stay tuned, because what John Deere just revealed could change the game forever. The day John Deere declared war on Detroit. It started like any other quiet morning in the automotive world. Industry analysts were busy dissecting quarterly reports. Pickup truck fans argued online about torque numbers and towing capacity. Ford was fine-tuning the next F-150 refresh. GM was touting Silverado EV updates, and Ram had just dropped teasers for its 2026 revolution. Business as usual. But before the sun had fully risen over the Midwest, a single press release from a name no one expected had detonated across the internet like a controlled demolition. John Deere is entering the pickup truck market. Detroit didn't see it coming. No one did. And within hours, the entire foundation of America's automotive hierarchy had been shaken to its core. For over a century, John Deere has been a titan of American agriculture, the name etched into the heart of rural America. It represented tradition, grit, and generations of farmers who built the country from the soil up. But that morning, Deere wasn't talking about tractors or combines. They were talking about a full-size, production-ready 2025 pickup truck designed not just for farmers, but for everyone. And this wasn't a gimmick. It wasn't a concept. It was real, fully engineered, tested, and slated to hit roads and fields by the end of the year. The announcement blindsided legacy automakers, many of whom had long viewed John Deere as a niche brand tethered to the farm, not the freeway. But what no one realized is that John Deere had been quietly building this moment for years. Behind closed doors in the heartland, engineers have been working in near total secrecy on a machine that would embody everything American pickups had lost: raw durability, mechanical honesty, and a deep connection to the working class. According to insiders, this truck, dubbed the John Deere RXD 100, is an all-terrain powerhouse that combines heavy-duty diesel performance with plug-in hybrid tech, a nod to the future without abandoning the rugged past. With over 12,000 pounds of towing capacity, customizable off-road gearing, and a modular bed system straight from their agricultural DNA, the RXD 100 wasn't built to compete. It was built to dominate. But what really terrified Detroit wasn't just the specs. It was the message. This wasn't just a product launch. This was a direct challenge to Ford's throne, GM's legacy, and even Tesla's high-tech posturing. John Deere didn't come to play. They came to disrupt. In their unveiling video, there were no celebrities, no polished stages, no Silicon Valley buzzwords. Just a drone shot over golden fields, a roaring engine, and one tagline burned into the screen: built where it matters. It wasn't flashy. It was something more powerful, authentic. Dealerships in the Midwest reported calls before the video had even finished playing. Farmers, ranchers, contractors, and even suburban truck fans flooded forums and Reddit threads, calling the move the most American thing to happen in years. The reaction was electric. Ford executives reportedly held an emergency strategy meeting. GM's PR team went silent for 2 days. And Elon Musk, never one to let a narrative slip away, tweeted a cryptic followed by a grainy screenshot of the RXD's undercarriage, which some analysts claim shows a groundbreaking suspension system borrowed directly from Deere's industrial equipment division. And then came the whispers. Had John Deere partnered with a major battery supplier? Were they in talks with military contractors? Was this just the beginning of a full consumer vehicle line? No one knew. Deere wasn't answering questions. But one thing was clear: a new player had entered the battlefield, and it wasn't just trying to sell trucks. It was trying to reclaim a culture. For decades, Detroit's Big Three had battled each other in an arms race of touchscreens, luxury trims, and price hikes. But in doing so, they may have forgotten who pickups were really for. John Deere didn't forget. And in one bold move, one green and yellow lightning strike, they reminded America what a truck could be. This was the day John Deere declared war on Detroit. In the days that followed John Deere's seismic reveal, the ripple effect grew into a tidal wave. Analysts began revising forecasts. Wall Street took notice. Automotive forums were on fire. But while the media scrambled to catch up, John Deere remained silent. No flashy interviews. No roadshow press blitz. Just a single, unbothered post on their social channels. a close-up of mud-caked tires, and the caption ready. And that was when people started to understand. John Deere wasn't entering the game to play. They were entering to reclaim it. The silent giant had finally roared, and the roar wasn't just loud. It was long overdue. Inside the executive towers of Detroit, the mood turned from confusion to concern. Behind the scenes, an emergency report circulated titled The Deere Disruption, a 43-page internal document warning automakers that brand loyalty in rural and blue-collar America had already begun to shift. Early pre-orders for the RXD 100 outpaced expectations by 400% in its first week. Most weren't coming from traditional tractor customers either. They were coming from truck guys. People who had driven Silverados and F-150s for years. Some were even Tesla Cybertruck reservation holders who canceled their orders. Why? Because while the Cybertruck looked like the future, the RXD 100 felt like home. And John Deere's approach was different, chillingly methodical. No hype, no overpromises, just a relentless focus on function. Leaked documents suggested the RXD's body panels were forged from a proprietary steel blend originally developed for high-impact farming equipment. The battery pack, mounted low between reinforced frame rails, could deliver up to 60 miles of all-electric range before switching to diesel. Perfect for short-range work without sacrificing long-haul endurance. And while competitors bragged about wireless charging and oversized dashboards, Deere offered something shockingly rare in 2025, a manual transmission option. The shock wasn't just technical, it was psychological. For decades, John Deere had built machines that never died. The kind of equipment passed down from father to son, still running strong after 30 years. Now that legacy was being fused into a truck, and consumers were responding with an emotional intensity that the Big Three hadn't seen in years. This wasn't just a product launch, it was a movement. On YouTube, videos of the RXD 100 prototype doing hill climbs and towing massive equipment went viral overnight. One clip, where a fully loaded RXD pulls a derailed train car back onto its tracks, garnered 12 million views in 48 hours. Meanwhile, TikTok exploded with rural creators declaring, "This is our truck." A new phrase was born, Deere Strong. Ford responded first, hastily releasing a teaser for a mystery project dubbed Titan Back, clearly meant to recapture some of the lost momentum. GM followed with a vague commitment to redefine durability. But to many, it was already too late. The conversation had shifted, and John Deere wasn't even engaging. They didn't need to. Their silence was the marketing. The roar had already echoed across the country, and in that quiet afterward, something became undeniably clear. John Deere had exposed a truth the industry had long ignored. That strength isn't just torque figures or battery range. It's trust. And in that category, they weren't the underdog. They were the sleeping giant that had just opened its eyes. And when giants roar, the ground moves. By now, the industry wasn't just talking, it was reeling. Ford and GM had scrambled to save face. Tesla had gone eerily quiet. And media outlets that once dismissed John Deere as just a farm brand were eating their words. But the real shock wasn't just the truck itself. It was the revelation that John Deere had been working on this for years, in total secrecy, and no one outside a tight circle of engineers and executives had the faintest clue. In a world dominated by leaks, spy shots, and insider blogs, Deere had managed something almost unthinkable in 2025, a completely classified vehicle project. And that secrecy? It wasn't accidental. It was strategic. According to whistleblowers who began speaking under condition of anonymity, Project Ironroot, the internal code name for the RXD 100, began not in Silicon Valley or Detroit, but in a low-slung facility on the edge of Waterloo, Iowa. This was the same place where the original Model D tractor had been born nearly a century ago. But deep beneath the factory floor, hidden in a converted storage annex, a hand-picked team of engineers worked under round-the-clock NDAs and biometric locks. They weren't just designing a truck, they were designing a symbol. Something that would redefine what it meant to be American-made, worker-driven, and future-proof. These weren't automotive designers. They were implement engineers, mechanical masterminds, and field mechanics. People who knew that real durability wasn't decided in a wind tunnel, but in a hay field after 3 days of rain. Their mandate wasn't to compete with Ford or Chevy. It was to exceed them quietly, then strike decisively. They ran off-grid test loops on Deere-owned land in Kansas, Montana, and the Dakotas. Custom parts were 3D printed in-house. Supply chain items were routed through dummy companies to prevent suspicion. By the time the first working prototype rolled out of its bunker, the RXD wasn't a theory. It was a beast ready for war. Industry veterans later admitted they'd noticed something odd in Deere's financials. Minor upticks in R&D spending, unusual patent filings that seemed unrelated to agriculture. But no one connected the dots. The big three had become so focused on battling each other. EV ranges, autonomous driving, subscription dashboards, that they failed to watch their flanks. John Deere exploited that blind spot with ruthless efficiency. And when they finally unveiled the RXD 100, it wasn't just a truck. It was proof that the giants of Detroit had become predictable, distracted, and vulnerable. One executive from a major automaker, speaking off record, reportedly said, "We underestimated them. We thought they were tractors and hay balers. We forgot they build machines that outlive us." The reveal also forced an uncomfortable truth onto the table. While other manufacturers chased tech trends and quarterly stock boosts, John Deere had spent years listening to a segment of the population that felt abandoned, the working men and women of America. And when they asked for something tough, Deere didn't give them touchscreen subscriptions. They gave them locking differentials, steel plating, and a removable cab system for modular upgrades in the field. This wasn't about innovation for the sake of headlines. It was about reliability, repairability, and respect. As the weeks rolled on, leaked images of an even larger RXD-HD prototype surfaced, hinting that Deere's ambitions might stretch far beyond just one truck. Freight haulers, tactical rigs, even civilian military crossover models were rumored. And then, quietly, a trademark filing appeared, RXD Series. This wasn't a one-off. This was a platform, a plan, a push. Detroit had been blindsided. But now, they were starting to realize John Deere wasn't just entering the truck market. They were taking it back. The headlines were no longer cautious. They were explosive. John Deere is coming for Detroit. The big three just got a fourth. But the loudest alarm wasn't coming from the press. It was echoing inside the boardrooms of Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. Because now the truth had settled in. This wasn't just an anomaly or a bold experiment. It was a real threat, one that had arrived with terrifying precision and wasn't going away. The auto giants had spent decades fine-tuning the pickup segment, expanding it into a $100 billion battlefield. And now, seemingly overnight, John Deere had invaded it and planted a flag. Ford, Chevy, and Ram executives weren't just worried about the RXD's capability. They were panicking over its cultural penetration. In towns where the F-150 once reigned supreme, conversations were changing. Truck buyers weren't just talking about horsepower or payloads anymore. They were talking about values. John Deere hadn't just built a truck. They had tapped into a vein of American identity that the big three had neglected for years. Deere wasn't offering heated massage seats and augmented reality displays. They were offering trust, simplicity, pride, and that's what scared the big three the most. Sales data began trickling in, and it was worse than expected. A large swath of early RXD 100 reservations were coming from longtime Ford Super Duty owners, many of whom cited increasing repair costs, software lockouts, and over-design nonsense as their reason for switching. One farmer in Nebraska told a local news station, "I don't want a truck that updates overnight and forgets how to work. I want a truck that runs. Period." Deere gets that. Meanwhile, Ram, long hailed for its luxurious interior offerings, faced a backlash in its own strongholds. A viral TikTok showed a side-by-side comparison of a fully loaded Ram 2500 and the base model RXD. The Deere had fewer gadgets, but better steel, more torque, and, crucially, a manual override for every electronic system. The video ended with the tagline, "One's for show, one's for work." It racked up over 30 million views in 3 days. Even worse, Deere's brand trust was untouchable. They weren't tainted by years of recalls, emission scandals, or data privacy lawsuits. In fact, their image was still that of the humble workhorse, the green and yellow machine that helped feed the nation. And now, that workhorse had grown legs, tires, and an engine built to pull mountains. Ford attempted to respond with a social media campaign highlighting their built tough legacy. It backfired when commenters flooded the post with photos of 30-year-old John Deere tractors still running strong. GM doubled down on tech, showcasing a new Silverado interface with voice-activated towing controls. Deere clapped back in a single, devastating ad, a dusty RXD dragging a massive trailer with a handwritten sign taped to the dashboard. "My voice is my hands." But the greatest threat wasn't in marketing. It was in momentum. Deere had cracked a code that the Big Three didn't even know existed. They weren't chasing trends. They were restoring purpose. And customers noticed. Reports emerged that dealerships in rural states were facing 9-month wait lists. Used trucks flooded online marketplaces as loyalists offloaded their old rides, hoping to be part of what was fast becoming a revolution. Behind closed doors, Detroit execs reportedly started floating terms like brand bleed, cultural erosion, and, ominously, legacy fracture. Because this wasn't just about sales, it was about loyalty. And when John Deere showed up, America remembered something it hadn't felt in a long time. Trucks built not for profit margins or tech hype, but for work, for family, for home. Ford, Chevy, and Ram should be terrified, because John Deere didn't show up to fight fair. They showed up with the trust of the land, the silence of giants, and a machine that speaks for itself. By now, even skeptics have been silenced. The rumors were true. The whispers were real. And the truck? It wasn't a concept, it wasn't vaporware, and it definitely wasn't some retrofitted tractor on wheels. The 2025 John Deere RXD 100 had arrived, and it was, in every sense of the word, a monster. Official specs hit the web on a Monday morning, and by noon, auto forums had crashed under the traffic. The numbers didn't just impress, they intimidated. Over 1,000 ft-lbs of torque, a dual-fuel system combining clean diesel with an independent 80 kilowatt-hour battery bank for hybrid boost. Payload? 4,200 pounds. Towing capacity? 18,000, with a high-torque variant rumored to be rated for 24,000. Those weren't half-ton bragging rights. That was commercial-grade strength delivered in a consumer package. And while most manufacturers still insisted on delicate unibody frames and over-computerized systems, Deere went old school and bulletproof. The RXD's body-on-frame construction was forged from Deere's own corrosion-resistant alloy, developed for harsh agricultural exposure. The undercarriage? Fully sealed against dust, ice, and high-pressure washdowns. Farmers, contractors, and off-roaders were salivating. This wasn't a mall crawler. This was a tank in a flannel shirt. What really blew minds, though, was the powertrain architecture. John Deere's hybrid diesel system didn't just extend range. It could operate in total silence for up to 60 miles on battery alone, making it ideal for hunting, field scouting, or sneaking into work zones without rattling the piece. And unlike competitors, Deere included a field service mode, a setting that allowed full diagnostics and mechanical overrides without dealership access. You could fix it in the field with basic tools. Mechanics across America called it a miracle in the age of sealed ECUs and $2,000 scan tools. The RXD also featured a modular rear bed system, where buyers could swap out traditional flatbeds for tool racks, hydraulic hookups, even power generator modules. It wasn't just a truck bed, it was a platform for work. And it didn't end there. Deere's integration of farming tech meant the truck could pair with equipment directly, enabling remote calibration, terrain scanning, and, incredibly, full cross-machine automation with nearby harvesters. Meanwhile, on the street, it still turned heads. The RXD had a brutal, muscular silhouette, broad fenders, a squared-off grille with a modern spin on the classic Deere insignia, and LED running lights designed to look like tractor marker lamps. Its interior was rugged, but refined. Heavy-duty switches, rubberized floors, but optional upgrades like heated seats, and weatherproof display panels. This was no stripped-down work rig. This was a machine you could drive to church, then straight through a blizzard. And John Deere's final mic drop? The price. The base model RXD 100 launched at $42,950. Thousands less than its Ford, Ram, or GM equivalents. And with more torque, more range, and fewer electronic shackles. The hybrid diesel premium? Just $4,000. And get this, no subscriptions. None. Every feature you paid for was yours for life. In an age when trucks charge $10 per month for heated steering wheels, Deere had the audacity to say, "We build it. You own it." Truck enthusiasts had no choice but to bow. Even hardcore brand loyalists, lifelong Silverado or F-Series diehards, began posting videos admitting they were jumping ship. It's like the trucks we used to love, but rebuilt with 2025 brains and 1985 guts, one reviewer said, tearing up slightly. I didn't know how much I missed that until now. The RXD 100 wasn't trying to be sleek. It was trying to be true. And in doing so, it had become the truck America didn't know it was waiting for. A monster, yes, but one we've needed for a very long time. By the time the first RXD 100s rolled off flatbeds and onto dusty dealership lots, something was already different. There was a tension in the air, not of resistance, but of change. Something fundamental had shifted in the DNA of American truck culture. The people who had spent their lives behind the wheels of Fords, Chevys, and Rams, they weren't just curious anymore. They were convinced. And that's when it became clear this wasn't just a product launch. It was the beginning of a new era, one where legacy alone could no longer guarantee loyalty. From the oil fields of Texas to the mountains of Montana, the John Deere RXD wasn't just being purchased, it was being adopted. Farmers, loggers, mechanics, linemen, and everyday truck owners were posting videos with titles like "This is what we've been waiting for" and "Goodbye Ford, hello Deere." Some showed side-by-side comparisons of maintenance costs. Others showcased their first 500-mile runs. But all had a common message. John Deere had done what the others couldn't or wouldn't.